I need to tell you about something I am so excited about. North of Ordinary, the Summer Camp Leadership Retreat is officially open for registration. This is not your generic leadership training. This is immersive, practical training for school-age leaders, for school-age educators, for summer camp and recreational staff who actually work with school-age children. Yay! If you're leading mixed age groups, if you're trying to build sustainable systems, if you want programming that actually works and you're tired of reactive firefighting, this retreat is for you. We'll be together June 12th to 14th at the Hidden Acres Camp in Ontario for 2 nights, immersive leadership sessions and real applicable tools you can bring back to your team immediately. Don't miss it. Head to MissJamieConsulting.com/Camp North to secure your spot. That's MissJamieConsulting.com/Camp North to secure your spot. Let's elevate your camp and let's elevate your leadership. Welcome to the Forgotten ECE, the show where before and after school educators, summer camp and PD staff and CYWs have a place where they are seen, heard, and valued. I'm your host, Jamie Wegler, and I am so excited you're here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Forgotten ECE. I have a treat for you. I am so excited to have Jenny Nechvatal here on the podcast. Jenny holds a Bachelor of Education in Early Childhood. She has worked within the early childhood sector for 30 plus years in teaching and management roles. Jenny's teaching career has been further enriched by 22 years of parenting 2 children who live with a disability, providing her first-hand experience and understanding of the unique challenges and triumphs that families face. This lived experience has led to Jenny writing a book for early childhood educators, embracing disability in early childhood, supporting children living with a disability and their families in early childhood settings. The book addresses the reality of receiving a diagnosis to inform educators' understanding of families' needs at such a time and the best way to engage and support them through a conversation, pedagogy, and everyday practice. Jenny has developed workshops for educators to equip educators with the skills and strategies necessary to create inclusive environments that support all children and families. Parent workshops allow families to gain valuable insight and tools to navigate their experiences and advocate effectively for their loved ones. I am so excited to have you here, Jenny. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Why don't you start by telling us where you are right now? Where are you from?
I am in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales in Australia, and it's my 9:23 a.m. So I think you're in the afternoon, late afternoon.
Yes, it's 5:23 p.m. here. That's so cool. I was in the Bright Star conference. That's how we connected. And that was my first time out of country and being in a different time zone. I was like, whoa.
And I tried to work out, time zones and all those sorts of things when I've done podcasts with other people, either in England or in the States, and we got there, so it's all good.
Yes. Definitely one of those mountains to cross, but we're here. We're doing it. So why don't you start with, for educators who haven't met you, how would you describe the work you do and what has shaped your passion for supporting children and families living with a disability?
What I currently do is we're early childhood educators who were still asking more questions, wanting more information, and I thought, okay, there's more here. There's a need. So I did those workshops. And obviously, the passion came from being a parent, I have 3 children, 2 of whom live with a disability, and being in early childhood and having that dual perspective of knowing what it's like to be that parent that receives that diagnosis and then going through the early intervention process and the school process, but also being an early childhood educator and having those hard conversations with families, but they wouldn't always take it on board. And also, every different places that I worked, there would be different levels, the educators or my co-workers, and some would ask lots of questions and really want to know and understand what it was like to have children living with a disability and what that diagnosis process was like and receive that diagnosis. And I just found that, there was just a thirst for knowledge, and I would help both educators and families by doing the consultancy work and, having written that book. So that's sort of where it came from.
That's incredible, and you get to see both sides of it as an educator and a parent, which is glorious, because we know we often only see the educator side, or as a parent you only see the parent side, but you get to really help people through not only navigating that news firsthand, but then how educators can best support those families coming from personal experience.
Yes.
That is amazing. And you bring this unique combination of experiences as both the educator and the parent of children living with disabilities. So how has living on both sides of this relationship shaped your perspective of our sector?
I guess, first of all, it helps me understand where parents are coming from and maybe why they're not wanting to have those hard conversations. I guess that sector perspective is that educators don't always understand what it's like to receive that diagnosis. And I think it's hard for educators to know how to respond. And every situation is different. Every family is different. Every diagnosis is different. How families respond is different. And I don't think the sector is as responsive as it could be. And we're certainly not set up to have that understanding and that responsiveness that families need at that time. Some families need a lot of support. Other families just aren't ready to take that on because they're not at that space yet. But I think we try to put every family into a little box of, well, your child has a disability, here you are, this is what we can do for you. But there's nothing outside that box. So I think we've got a lot to learn about individuality of families and children in that space where they have received a disability, and how, as a we can be responsive to those individual families.
Yeah, it's like how you said that I don't like that that's how it is, but I like that you said that we tend to put them in a box. It's like we become robots when we have to have these hard conversations. Like, we're programmed in school or when we're doing our learning for early child education that, okay, you start with this, you end with this, here's the facts, and by the way, I'm not a doctor, but I think you should get this checked out, and this is how it plays out. And it doesn't really go into the human aspect of it. Like, these are people receiving this news or having these conversations, and they're going to react in different ways, and we can't prepare for that. And how you then show compassion to them and understanding, it goes a long way. And we kind of skip over that whole I'm a person too part. And these families are people, and we have to care about them as much as we possibly can during these tough conversations.
Yes. And I don't think over here in Australia there's any sort of training or information to educators when they're training to how to have those conversations, and really training on disability and what it is and how to work with families and children with a disability is really missing from our, I don't know if you call it curriculum or the right word, but it is missing in that, university. We have TAFE here, which I think is similar to community college or that sort of, like the step before university. Really missing. It's just not there. So educators will start working and they may not have had experience with people who live with a disability, because I certainly didn't when I started working. And I know disability is much more recognised these days. It's much more out there in the community. You see a lot more people with a disability in the community now, certainly here in Australia. I don't know what it's like for you, but it wasn't, I guess, as accessible and welcome what they are now. But you might also be a person who's only a few years into their teaching career, and sometimes you're put into a management role, a room leader role or something like that, and you're having to have those hard conversations. And if you haven't had that training or information about how to have those hard conversations or even about disability, you're really going in blind with no knowledge at all. So that's what I'm wanting to support educators with. And my book, it's written in short chapters because I know we're all time poor in a service. And
Excellent.
one of the chapters is about having those hard conversations so that if they are preparing for that and they've, already read that section, but they think, oh, I've got to go and have this conversation. What do I need to say? They can just pick it up and go, oh, right, do that, and that, And they're suggestions and strategies as to how to prepare for those conversations and make it just a little bit easier and successful for everybody. But yeah, so that's how it was written because I know, we're all time poor and quite a few educators here have English as a second language. So it's, written quite simply. And I guess I was about to say not too much jargon, but I guess sometimes we forget when we're using jargon. So maybe there is some jargon in there, but yeah, that's just something where you could just pick it up, read that little bit sort of quickly and go into that conversation. And if you're just prepared or even just have that different perspective of what it makes to receive that diagnosis and you go into that conversation just, I guess, with a different outlook, different perspective, it can make it a lot more successful.
Yeah. You said so much there to unpack, but the main thing is that I think this no, it's all good. I think the main thing is you're absolutely right. Like it's not just in Australia. This need is all over. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, disability is prevailing now and everyone has disability, whatever. But no, the fact is that our technology has advanced so much that we just hear more about it. We're also working really hard to make places accessible and workplaces and schools accessible to make everyone feel like they belong. And it all adds to this and contributes to this I'll say increase, but I would argue that it's not even really an increase to disabilities. But you're hitting such a need on the head, like a hammer and a nail. And I'm trying to say the analogy, but it's not coming out right. But because it's true, these hard conversations, like even when I think back to doing, I did community college here in Canada, and then I did university for teachers, and I had a little bit of training in college, and in teachers college, I had no training whatsoever about hard conversations with families. The parental engagement portion was awful. It's through practice, right? That we learn these things, and until you're in it and you're doing it, it's hard. So having something that you can look back at and be like, okay, take a breath. I can do this, and it's accessible and it's short. And I love that you said that you read it with educators in mind because you know firsthand, like we are time poor, but also accessibility, so it's easier to read and understand. That's amazing. What would you say you wish educators understood about families who may be navigating diagnoses, uncertainty, or overwhelm?
I describe it as a roller coaster ride that you haven't bought a ticket for and you're never going to get off. And yes, you have highs and you have lows. And there are times when families are just so overwhelmed that it can just be, one more comment from the daycare centre, the after school care educators, that it can just almost crush those parents. And it can be the absolute opposite. You could just say a positive comment or sometimes just an acknowledgement of what those parents are doing. And that can make them think, okay, I can do this, or okay, tomorrow's another day. Let's just start again. So you just try and step into their shoes. And that's what the first part of the book is about that reality of receiving a diagnosis. And I also have some stories from other families in there as well. And they're talking about their diagnosis journey and how they felt. Every family will just respond differently. Like one of the stories is that mum said that she was just really relieved to get that diagnosis. Her daughter was diagnosed with autism. And the reason she was relieved is that her family had been blaming her, like her parenting, for what they were seeing in her daughter. And if to be able to go, well, no, actually, I'm not a crap parent. I'm actually a good parent. And different families with stages, or maybe accepting that diagnosis in different ways. And they will be going through different stages at different times. So it's those relationships that you build with them are just essential. It's that relationship, that communication that you have with them. And I know every family is also different. So, you have your families that are just easy to chat to, that if you ever have to say anything to them, it won't be an issue. You have your families that are harder to connect with, and that probably sometimes anything you say is going to be an issue. But just remember that every family is different and they will be at different stages of accepting that diagnosis, or sometimes just not even wanting to go down that process of diagnosis. And that's because they don't want to get on that roller coaster and have to go through all the therapy and appointments and everything that's involved in that. So, yeah, they're all just individuals.
Excellent advice. Yeah, it really goes back to that compassion and the humanizing it and having empathy.
Mm,
That's just understanding. It's easy to forget that these are people and that they go home and
mm,
they have all these whole lives ahead of them that they're dealing with, and we only have maybe a 9 to 5 or a 8 to 6 or whatever the
mm.
hours are at the child care center. Or if we're in before and after school program, you only have those couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the
Yes.
afternoon. So make the most of it and try to focus on the positive. Absolutely.
And I guess we always want the best for the child. And I think maybe we're so focused on that we forget all the other things around it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I always say to educators in regard to maybe not understanding how parents are feeling, you don't know what you don't know. If you haven't gone through the reality of receiving a diagnosis disability for your child, you don't know what it's like. It's like any situation. I don't know what it's like to be diagnosed with cancer because I haven't had that happen to me. And yeah, any situation that is different, you haven't been, you can empathize. You don't really understand. So I think we sometimes get so focused on what we want for the child, and that's understandable. And that's what we should be doing. You know, the child is the reason that we're there. But sometimes we also have to get to a point where we go, I've done everything I can. And sometimes you don't let it go. You'd still continue to work on it in the background. But sometimes we have to just go, okay, they're not ready, and I have done everything I can.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's not pressuring them. It's understanding. So many good tips. It is. It honestly it is, and I hope that the listeners are gracious for us because you come from such a place that has this exponential experience because you have the I'm going to say the benefit. You have the benefit of seeing the
Mm,
both sides of it. Um
absolutely.
Yes, hard conversations. So the episode is focusing on our hard conversations. In your experience, Jenny, why do educators often avoid them, and why do families sometimes avoid them too? So we talked a little bit about like the uncertainty or the not knowing how to or the experience, but can you kind of touch on that a little bit more?
I think with educators, I think with just humans, it's natural to fear having a hard conversation. And we all have different personalities in early childhood or, before and after school care. And some of us are good at having those conversations and find sort of difficult conversations easy to have. Other people, and I was certainly that way, I didn't like having hard conversations. And you do get involved in the families and the children and their lives. And it's hard to go to them and give them, feedback that might be something that they don't want to hear. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's, different personalities, I guess you grew up, how did you have hard conversations? Were they just, swept under the carpet? Do you have any skills whatsoever in having those conversations? So I think it is fear and a lack of knowledge that stops educators. It can also be experience, like I said before, if you're only just a few years into working, that's a really big responsibility to have and a really big undertaking. I mean, they were conversations that, even, after 30 more years in the early childhood sector, I still dreaded having because they're hard conversations to have with parents, to be talking to them about your concerns about their child's either delay in development or, concerns. They're really hard to have. So I think it's just natural to be concerned about having them and to be worried about it and be nervous about it. So I think if that's how educators are feeling, you're human, don't worry. That's okay. And I think families, you always want everything to be easy and perfect, I guess, for your children, and you don't want them to have to struggle in any way or find things more difficult. So you don't want to hear that they might be having difficulty engaging with their peers, because their social skills, are a little bit behind. You want you always want everything to be okay for your children. So I think hearing that it may not be is difficult for children, for parents. And that's sometimes why we will have, conversations for a long time. Like we might start with children when they're in the 2-year-old room and we're just having those conversations along the way. And then it's not until their child might turn 4 and they suddenly think, "Oh, they're going to school next year, we've got to do something." And then they finally start listening to you. But it's really frustrating for those 2 years of having those conversations when early intervention is so important and could really support that child and the family, but the families aren't wanting to hear for understandable reasons. So, yeah, and especially if it's their, second or third child that might have been diagnosed with a disability, they know what it's going to be like, all the extra therapy and time and all those sorts of things. So they might be just like, no, 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 I don't want to hear.
Don't
Yeah,
tell me
basically,
this isn't a thing.
I don't have
I
to
don't,
do anything.
I don't want to compare it to my car, but it's like when I'm driving my car and it starts making a funny sound. Nope, I'm just going to turn the radio up. If I don't hear it,
Yeah,
it's not a thing until it's a thing.
sounds like a plan.
It never works out in the end, but I try.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I definitely don't want to sit here and say that I understand. My son's in the process of getting diagnosed with ADHD, and my daughter was being tested for central auditory processing disorder. And even just the thought, you're absolutely right. Just the thought of something being harder for them, even like the steps or someone not understanding them. Like my son needs to move. He gets in trouble in class all the time because he is moving around 24/7, or he sits on the wrong way of his chair or whatever. But its body just needs to go, and then trying to advocate for that all the time, and it's until you're in it, and until you're in it with yeah, until you're in it, you have no idea. You're like, okay, well, everyone's fine. The world's just a great place. And then you're in it and you're like, oh, okay. This is not what I thought.
I just a general lack of understanding. If you haven't experienced it, yes, and especially the school system here, it's not recognizing children like that. It's probably a lot better than it used to be, but I will have conversations with parents and the school, they'll have meetings and the school say, "Oh, yes, we're doing this, this, and this." And the parents say, "Well, you need to do this, this, and this." "Oh, yes, we can do that." And then the next meeting, or they get a note home that they're in trouble for doing something, but they didn't put in place what they said they would. And it just goes around and around. So it's very frustrating.
Yes, very much so. My son, when we're still in the process of getting the formal diagnosis, but when you know. And he got in trouble for acting out in class or running around or something, and they were going to keep him in from recess. And I was like, "Do you have a wish? Like, I'm really sorry, but if you keep him in from recess, he is going to lose his crap in the afternoon, and then it's you that are going to suffer. Like,
Gotta be
you can't,
worse.
yeah. Like, listen to me. I'm not just saying this because I want him to go out for recess. Like, I understand from an ECE perspective, like outdoor education is important. And of course I will advocate that till I'm blue in the face, but you also have to understand that this child needs to get their energy out. If you want to get him in trouble, or if you want to, whatever, make him run a lap. Like that is going to do you so much better."
Yeah, it just can't seem to get through sometimes. It's very, very
No.
frustrating.
Yeah, and like from an educator perspective, I get to see a lot of children that we've helped raise in our programs go on to school, and then trying to work with the teachers that they're going into school with and build that partnership so that it's like, no, listen, like we've had them for 1 or 2 years. I understand what you need to do to make this transition smooth, and then getting feedback like, no, we're fine. We don't need your help. Oh, okay.
Yes, very frustrating, isn't it? Yes. I know here we have, the final year of childcare, the educators have to do reports that go to the school
Hmm.
after read them, and then, at the end of term 1, the teachers will be ringing saying, "You didn't tell." "Well, yes, we did. It's all in that report." And they contact the school and say, "Look, we just want to talk, tell you a little bit." And if they had just listened and known some of those strategies from the get-go, that child's transition into school would have been so much easier, and it would have been so much easier for the teachers. But they just think, "Oh, yeah, it's childcare, they know nothing." And it's like, well, yeah, we do know something.
Just wait. Call me at Christmas and we'll see what I know.
Yeah, after a year
It's
of
true.
hell sucked in.
Yeah, yes. Sorry. Good luck. You're so right. And I think that I know we didn't really touch on this in when we were prepping for this, but I think the partnerships with from childcare to school, and then when you're in school, that before and after school education, I think that those teachers in the both programs, the actual like the school program and the before and after school, should be communicating often. Like, we're on the same team. There should never be this disconnect that there is, because we all have the child's best interest in our mind. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, yes, definitely. And it's very hard to sometimes get that happening.
Yes. So going back on track, you're so easy to talk to though.
Sometimes that's where the
Right?
really good so don't stress.
Can you share a moment when a difficult conversation created a meaningful shift for a child or a family, and what made that conversation successful?
When I read this question, it was actually really hard to think of one specific example, and I think because there have just been so many, and it's interesting how sometimes that it can be a conversation that you will just have out in the playground sometimes, and you'll just
Mhm.
and the parents will go, "Yeah, I had been worried about that," or something like that. Other times it takes to, having that more formal conversation where you actually have to make a time for the meeting and, yeah, sit down formally and have that meeting. But I think there was one family who, just from the get go, when we raised concerns, they were just happy to listen to what we had to say, and I guess saw us as the experts, which we never. I guess we want to see as being experts in our profession, but we don't want to make it as though we know more than the parents about their child.
Mhm.
So they just what we had to say and were prepared to put it in place. And quite often we would start with suggesting, "Oh, how about you go and see a speech therapist?" Knowing that that speech therapist would probably say, "Let's go and see an OT," and then it would go from there. Yeah, it was just a family that just wanted to listen, wanted to, do the best for their child. And they went off to that speech therapist. And then after a few sessions with the speech therapist, they came back and said, "Oh, they're going to send us to an OT." And we went, "Oh, okay, that's good." And just followed on. So, but once again, every family is just so different that what exactly we said with that family, but it's just knowing your families and say some you just need to tread so lightly. Others you can be, I guess, a bit more blunt and straightforward with. So yeah, but that was just a lovely family that was just prepared to listen, and I guess that's what made it successful because they were prepared to listen, and we knew them well, so we knew how far we could go in that conversation, I guess. And then
Mm.
it's the follow-up. We always recommend, if we're saying the speech therapist, we would recommend where they could go, and then we just as well. So that follow-up is just as important as that conversation or all those conversations you're having, because it takes a lot of conversations to get to that point.
Yeah, you're invested by that point. You're like, okay.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So how's it going? How's speech? What's happening? Let me know.
Sometimes it's we just wanna know we were right.
Honestly, though, honestly.
Just right.
It's quite
We're
true.
only human.
But yeah, I like what you said there too. It is this knowing your families. We work here in Ontario. We have a foundation of learning. It's well-being, expression, belonging, and engagement. And this is what we base everything around. And honestly, it's when families know that they can trust you and you've built that relationship and set that foundation with them, these conversations become they're always going to be hard conversations, but it becomes a little bit more easier to take either for the family and maybe it's not easy to take for the family, but they know that you're coming from a good place, that you're not just saying things, and that you're being honest with them. And then also,
Mm.
as you were talking, I was thinking about like the question itself, but I guess successes would be different anyways, because a success for one family who's listening and is like, yeah, okay, I'm on board, let's do it. While that's an easy success, a success for a harder family would be after the third or fourth conversation, they're like, okay, let's go to the speech therapist. And it's still successful. It just might look a little bit different, right?
Yes, yeah, and I think also sometimes families will come to you as well. So you were talking about, those
Hmm.
connections and that I think if a family comes to you, then you've well and truly certainly done your job, because if they're comfortable in actually raising that with you first, then you've built that relationship, I guess, sense of security for that family. So that's successful.
Yeah, this really puts an emphasis on how much of a resource we are as early childhood educators and how how backed up by knowledge we are, and showing that in these relationships is helpful. Not everyone sees it that way, but it's helpful. So for before and after school educators, there's often only a few minutes for families each day. How can they still create these safe and supportive pathways for meaningful conversation with their families, do you think?
I think it comes down to it's the relationship. So it's that daily greeting, getting to know your family so that you can say, "Oh, how did your weekend go? How was," they might have been going to a family celebration. So whether it was a christening or, grandma's 80th birthday or something like that. And it is hard because you have such limited time, but it's building those connections and showing that you're interested in them and their child. So knowing their child and saying, "Oh, how did your soccer game go?" or hockey game or whatever they've played or things like that. And I know it's hard to do that in a very short time, but it's if you can be very specific in those questions and they've got, that opportunity to tell you, that just builds that relationship so much more than just, "Hi, how are you? How was your weekend?" sort of thing. When you're specific and you know your families, you've got that relationship there so they feel more comfortable when you have to have those harder conversations. And sometimes you can start those conversations just with different comments that could be probably a bit more on pickup time. It might be, "Oh, he was really, really quiet today or really wanted time to himself today, was not wanting to join in play." And you can just leave it as that. And, that they might say, "Oh, yeah, he would have been really tired. We had a really big weekend." Or, "Yeah, he just likes to do that." But you might have started that thought in their mind that, "Oh, he's not joining in play with everybody else."
Hmm.
They, you know, little John or Johnny, "Why didn't you want to play today?" And it might be, he said, "I just had a headache," or, "I was just, really tired after a day at school." And they might come back to you the next day and say, "Oh, look, yeah, he did say he was really tired," or, "He had a bit of a headache." And that's just opens them up to more conversations. And you might just say, "Yep, I'll keep an eye on it next time." Or, educators might reflect and go, "Actually, maybe we just need that bit of a quiet space or quiet time in our program," or something like that. So it's that open communication just in that really short time. And even just asking parents about their day as well or how they are, because we all like to be acknowledged.
Hmm.
So, and sometimes you can see parents walking in and they will just be absolutely, you can sort of tell they've had a hard day. And your parents, say, "Oh, had a hard day," or, I might just say, "Oh, it's just a general, how was your day?" might be enough for that family. It just depends on your families, but yeah, just getting to know them and asking those specific questions about them that gives you some more information is really good.
Oh, absolutely. I talk about this a lot about the importance of these conversations because school age is such a short time. But you have this beautiful ability to get to know the kids a little bit better because they can tell you things. They can tell you what they're excited about.
Yes, you worked it up here anyway.
Sometimes it's not what other people would want to hear, but it's good. I had a little one the other day tell me that, guess what my mom did this morning? She threw the elves. And I was like, I can tell what kind of morning you had. And I have a good relationship with this mom. So when she came in, I'm like, I heard it was a rough morning. But like this, and they open the door so you can have these amazing conversations with them.
Yes, makes a difference.
What small but powerful mindset shifts can help educators approach hard conversations with more confidence and compassion?
I think seeing it as a two-way conversation. So it's an exchange, not just you're telling them something. So it's an opportunity for them to learn more. So whether it's about more about the child or more about the family, it could be about family dynamics. Sometimes you will have one parent who's got concerns and they're wanting to know how they can support their child, and another parent who just doesn't want to hear about it. And really difficult for both parents, but you might, going into that conversation, discover that that's what's happening. And that might be why the family hasn't been as open to what you're saying because they are having those family dynamics at home. So see it as an opportunity to learn some more and build that relationship, really. And it's an exchange of information. So it's a two-way conversation. You're not just giving information, you're receiving information as well. And that builds better relationships, which is what we all want, really, with our families.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that because it's that active listening portion where if you go in thinking you're just going to talk and they're just going to hear you and that's it, you're only going to be thinking about what you're saying next or what the next part of the process is for hard conversations, quote unquote. But if you go in with the mindset that this is a two-way street, you need to actively listen to get the information that will help and only make the conversation stronger.
Yes.
In your experience, are there specific phrases or framing techniques or conversation openers that you found especially helpful for these conversations?
No, I don't think that there are because it's every conversation is so different and every family is so different. And once again, you've got those families that you could sit down and just say, well, look, this is what we're concerned about, and be really sort of blunt, straightforward. And others, you might need to have that sort of little bit of a chit chat first and,
Hmm.
and then go about it in a very roundabout way. So I think it just depends on your families. And that's probably not very helpful, but it is on depends on the different personalities, the families that you have. So I think you just need to know your families and to be able to gauge how they're going to respond. And sometimes that could be the body language as you start that conversation. And once again, that active listening, because if they just try to cut you off, there's probably not much point maybe going ahead with what you were going to say. And you might just need to either stop the conversation or steer it in a different direction.
Yeah. And no, it really plays, what you said really plays into this underlying message that we've been saying this whole episode is know your families, understand that they're human, understand that they're people, and really just, if you take nothing else away from this, know your families. um,
We'll keep on banging on.
just literally, we can't say it any more clear. I want to talk about your book. This is so exciting, and I'm actually really excited to get my hands on it. So, if you don't mind sending a link, I will share it with everyone. But this is great.
Yeah.
So, in
So
your book,
basically, Amazon.
Amazon, even better. Okay, everything's on Amazon, right? So, it speaks directly to this space that we've been talking about today. So, what key message or shift do you hope educators take away from it?
To look at that parent perspective and try to step into the parent's shoes. And at least when they're having a meeting or having a conversation, preparing for a conversation, think about what it is for that parent and have that parent's perspective in mind, because I think that then changes how you would probably approach that conversation. And I think as educators, we want to have the conversation, have the therapy started, the child improving, growing, all those sorts of things. But like I said before, reality is it can take you 2 years to get to that stage where they go, oh, actually, and it may not necessarily we've been saying, but it's that suddenly they'll go, oh, my child's going to school, I need to do something. So I think having that different perspective and that more understanding will just change how you have those conversations. And that could actually, of those conversations, may take that on board better and be prepared to actually take those steps of whatever the next steps are for that child. And the other thing is parents just want their child to be seen for who they are. So just accept that child for who they are, see their uniquenesses and celebrate who they are, because they're a person within their own right, and parents want their child to be acknowledged and seen for that.
That's beautiful, and it's such a great reminder that they're people too. These children are people, and we talk a lot about the diagnosis. We talk a lot about what the steps look like for the families and for the educators, but validating that these are children that we love and we care about, and we're in their lives, and we need to understand that they're children and that they want to be children, and they have a right to be children and a right to education and a right to play. How we contribute that and how we look at these situations should very much be they are children.
Yes.
You have also created wonderful workshops for both educators and families. What transformations do you see most often when people engage with this learning?
Usually seeing the purpose behind the behaviour from the children, because I talk about sensory regulation, information on autism, and you can just see little light bulb moments popping off all around the room, and educators turn to each other and go, "Oh, that's so and so. That's why they did that," and things like that, because they're seeing why children are behaving in certain ways, and they're realizing that there's a purpose behind it. There maybe they're trying to communicate a need or a want, not just, throwing something because they want to throw something across the room, trying to communicate, feeling really overwhelmed, or they need, to move their body, like you're saying with your son. He's not running, he wants to distract everybody in the class. Bodies don't have to move. So it's recognizing that purpose behind the behavior and then seeing what strategies they can implement that are relevant to their service. And I did a customized workshop for a service here in Wagga, and the child had a diagnosis of autism spectrum. After the workshop, the next day they set up like a hammock for him that he could just go to and swing in. And they said that was the best day he had ever had. He'd go to that hammock, do a bit of swinging, have some quiet time, come out, engage, go back into that hammock, come out, engage. And they just said it was the best day that he'd ever had. And they just saw that impact. And another service, they had probably about 70% of their children were either diagnosed or sort of probably potentially needed to like this. And I just suggested to them to play like some, it was just white noise or relaxation music in the background. And they did that, and they said it just made such a difference, like not only for children, but educators as well. And it's just like that are making a difference. And it's just having that understanding of the purpose of the behavior, what strategies they can put in place, and that they can be really simple but really effective. And then also they get from it that appreciation or understanding of the parents and where the parents are coming from and why parents may sometimes not want to hear what they've got to say or, be putting all the strategies from the speech therapist in place because, it's just too much trying to do 5 strategies every day. One strategy is just enough. So just having more understanding of where parents are and what's being put in place for them.
That's amazing. It's such a need. You've hit such a need for this. I'm so glad. And that you have, like I keep touching on, but that you have the experience firsthand as a parent and then as an educator, of course. Is there a part of your journey that feels tender, important, or rarely spoken about, but deserves a space in a conversation like this?
I think it's the isolation of families when their child receives a diagnosis or has a diagnosis. And whether it's a physical diagnosis, so it's just more difficult to get out in the community, or we were quite isolated because when one of our boys, he was about 13 or 14, he didn't like people coming into our house. So we actually had to stop having friends over. So we didn't have friends over until Ryan and Zach moved out full time last year in July. So for all of that time, and there were 20, they'll be 23 in December this year. So yeah, that's a really
Wow.
long time friends in your home and engage in just that normal, things like even family we couldn't have over. And then also obviously going out in the community was difficult as well. We were very socially isolated for a very media, it's even harder because we kept up with friends via that or, phone calls, or if we ever wanted to go out socially, we had to go out separately. But I would also quite often get phone calls from my husband saying, can you please come home? Because one of them was that would lead to quite aggressive behaviour. So I think isolation is a reality for a lot of these families and it's not recognised and acknowledged.
Thank you so much for sharing that and being vulnerable in the space to do so. I can't imagine what that was like, and also now integrating back into the ability to open your home a little bit more would be challenging after all that time. So thank you.
It was a while to think, hey, we can actually go and do something on the weekend because it was something I hadn't done for such a long time that, I'd often see events happening in the community and thinking, that'd be good to go to. And just hadn't been able to do those things for so long. And then once the boys moved out, it took us a little while to go and do that. Even just going shopping on a Saturday afternoon, having a wander around the shops, I just hadn't done for so long that it was like, that was absolute freedom. Yeah, do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like a newfound freedom, and then the ability to do it with your partner. You're like, oh, I still like you. Okay.
That's why we got together in the first place. That's why we've been married for so long.
So funny. Thank you so much. What final message would you love to leave the educators working in before and after school programs who want to support children and families more deeply?
It just goes back to seeing the child for who they are, and just appreciating them for who they are, acknowledging individuality. I think that is the most important part that you need to do.
Thank you so much, Jenny. This has been a pleasure. You are so fun to talk to, but also have such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited that you agreed to this, and I'm sure I'll have you on here again in the future. If anyone wants to buy your book, you said it was on Amazon. And is there any way to get a hold of you
Certainly
if
is.
someone wants to send you a message, like a LinkedIn or email, or is there some way our listeners can get a hold of you?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and the email is idsenquiries@outlook.com.
Thank you so much for all of this time that you've spent with me and managing technology around that. And thank you, listeners, for another amazing day. Happy learning, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you, amazing listeners, for your support. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at MissJamie_RECE. Give a star rating and leave a review. Have something you want to hear about in relation to before and after school programs or full day summer camp? DM me or comment. Again, thank you so much and happy learning.